I'm a fan of the new Hyundai Santa Cruz, but it is a polarizing utility vehicle. I was pleasantly surprised by some of its attributes and outright disappointed by a couple others. So today I'm going to try to explain those virtues along with everything new for 2023. For the new model year, the base SE trim will now have blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. There's also a new night edition, which is a decked out SEL spec with the turbo engine and all-wheel drive as standard, dark accents, big 20-inch wheels, and side steps. Along with that, they tweaked the sand and white paints. And for the SEL Premium trim, which is sitting next to me, you'll now have the larger touchscreen from the limited trim, along with the more advanced Smart Cruise from that top spec. This is something that will allow it to do stop and go in traffic, along with using the navigation to help it with curve control. And before I go further, if you enjoy fun, detailed car content without fluff, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications. The thing that actually shocked me the most about the new Santa Cruz, the driving experience. So you want to have very well calibrated steering. It feels precise, predictable, there's a hint of feedback thrown in there, and I'm happy to report that Hyundai actually kind of took this on more of the firm side of things when it comes to ride. It doesn't feel like Subaru Outback Plush. That helps it offset the weight and the center of gravity to keep body roll under control. And despite that, it's comfortable. You can take it over really bad roads and it takes it on the chin, making it a great car for neglected city streets or windy mountain back roads. And while I won't make this its own reason because I don't think this is a standout, the 8.6 inches of ground clearance and fairly capable H-Track all-wheel drive system should make this a willing partner on most forest service roads. The main constraints seem to be the sub 18-degree approach angle, lack of underbody protection, and only 50% of the torque can go to the rear wheels. The pseudo lock feature just preemptively tells the system to send more torque to the back as it tends to hold a heavy front bias otherwise. The next reason should not come as a surprise, but it's going to be the practical bed and storage solutions throughout. So you'll have a 52-inch box back there, which isn't exactly impressive, notably shorter than the Ridgeline and a hair smaller than the Ford Maverick. But unlike the Ford, it has a underfloor trunk. It does have a drain hole, and you can fit some really small luggage, a backpack, and they also added 2 more cubbies on either side of the bed. Plus, if you get the activity package or any of the turbo models, you're gonna have a roll-up tonneau cover. As standard, you do have several tie-down points in there as well, allowing you to put maybe small dirt bikes in here and really actually utilize the space as a bed because that short length is a limiting factor. But if you're as crafty as a dad with too much free time, the Santa Cruz was designed so that you could haul 4x8 sheets of stuff in a pinch. Plus, each truck gets a little built-in bumper step. Importantly, this can tow up to 5,000 pounds with the optional turbo and even 3,500 in base engine front drive form, making it a truly capable hauler if it needs to be. And the standard composite material means that dents and rust are much less of an issue. And there's still a couple other storage solutions like underseat storage in the back and a fair amount of cubbies in the cabin as well. My next reason is the engine's performance and the 8-speed dual clutch. Under the hood, you'll have 2 engine options. A 2.5 liter naturally aspirated, direct injected, and port fuel injected inline 4, or you can truck up the ego of your local V6 muscle car owner with a turbocharged 2.5 liter that makes 90 more horsepower and 130 more pound-feet of torque, and comes with an 8-speed dual clutch hooked up to all-wheel drive. This engine only comes on the Night, SEL Premium, and Limited. I'd also like to thank the friendly dealership Royal on the Eastside here in Bloomington, Indiana, for letting me test a Hyundai Santa Cruz. They have an interesting pre-owned inventory like this, and they also sell all of their new cars without a markup. Check them out. Now, I haven't driven the base model, but I think at 191 horsepower with 8 different ratios to choose from with a torque converted automatic, it should haul its own weight okay, especially in front wheel drive form. It just is a touch hefty, which is why I'm glad that they offer the forced induction variant, because here I was able to secure a 0 to 60 time of under 6 seconds. And that was in spite of a really slow launch, because these do not have launch control, because why would it? But it very quickly starts to get into a groove and show off its muscles. And the dual clutch can both shift with haste during hard acceleration and change gears smoothly at all speeds. My biggest gripe is that the throttle pedal often has a frustrating lag from a standstill. Now, I know some of you think bad about Hyundai dual dual clutches because in the past they would overheat in kind of hairy scenarios off-road, but the old units were completely different and used a dry clutch. This one is a wet clutch, and it has proved to have much better thermal capacity. And my next reason to pick up the Hyundai Santa Cruz is very well thought out tech. You're going to have an 8-inch touchscreen as standard. That's going to come with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but the regular UI works nicely, and the screen itself has a good resolution, and you pair this up with a nice set of analog gauges on the SE and SEL. Available on SEL, standard on up, is a 10-inch virtual gauge cluster with a fair amount of functions to it, but great resolution, and it's integrated into the dashboard in a pretty nice way. And actually, I do like kind of the swoopiness of the cabin. Now you can also upgrade that 8-inch touchscreen to the 10.3-inch screen. However, you will sacrifice wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in the process. You will also lose the physical controls for the HVAC and radio, making them all capacitive, which is something I feel most people, including myself, find annoying. And if I'm going to bring up tech, I should also bring up that Hyundai is among the best, if not the best, of the mainstream brands when it comes to their smart adaptive cruise control system that I talked about a little bit earlier. And the last reason that makes this a very compelling SUV truck thing is the wow factor. Whether it's from the distinctive Tucson front end or the angular looks that kind of continue around back, the fun driving dynamics, the punchy performance, oddly techy interior, Swiss Army bed, or good towing. It's an interesting car with cool capabilities that make it even more practical, but it's not all good. So now I need to kind of move into the downsides of this thing. And one of those is predicted reliability, and I hope I'm wrong because I do really like this thing, but it has suffered a fair amount of issues in its first model year, most of them being powertrain related, with people having a stalling issue, a loss of power, or in some cases, failed transmissions. It seems that I'm reading more issues on the turbo DCT route, but it's not exclusive to that, and there are a couple other miscellaneous reports with like issues with the headlights or the brakes. And I would normally give a car the benefit of the doubt because a lot of times there are teething issues, and some people think maybe it was just the cars built in 2021, except if we look at Hyundai's past, it's not super promising. At the very least, they do offer one of the most aggressive factory warranties out there, but if reliability is one of your top priorities, I can't exactly recommend this thing yet. But maybe in the future, as it does seem like Hyundai's again paying more attention with, switching to the wet clutch and also switching to direct injection and port fuel injection for both of these engines so that you can have good efficiency and clean intake valves. And the next drawback would be the interior plastic choice. It just feels very cheap on the inside, even here with a upper $30,000 MSRP. At least it's soft touch where your elbows rest, but that's about it. And then they use a borderline obsessive amount of gloss black plastic that just gets kind of smudged, dusty, and gross. I wish that the interior took a more rugged approach to this kind of vehicle, or go more premium and not just neither. You at least can get leather if you go with the top trim along with ventilated seats. You'll get lumbar adjustment on everything except for the base. But then when we move to the back seat, you also run into another problem. It's cramped. So this is about a foot longer than the Tucson, but more than that goes to the rear. So they actually made the back seat tighter. It's not very comfortable either. The seat back does not give you lumbar support, stands pretty upright. At the very least, it's good that someone my size can fit. However, most other crossovers and trucks offer a more accommodable back seat. You don't get vents or USB ports unless you go for the top trim. And then everything back there is kind of a hard touch plastic too. Another downside that's more of a grievance on my part is when you have vehicles like the Subaru Baja or even the old Chevy Avalanche, you could fold down the rear seats or even like remove the rear glass too to give yourself a much bigger bed. Because when you have just a little over 4 feet to deal with, you got to think outside the box. And then the last drawback would be the visibility. I mean, out front, it's actually really good. Like the windshield is very close to you and the front windows are low, but the beltline kind of shoots up and the rear window is small. So I would consider blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert very important, and that's why I'm glad it's standard now. Overall, I can't see any mid-sized truck buyer really even considering a Hyundai Santa Cruz, but it's a great alternative to the SUV driver who's a little truck curious, or someone interested in a competent all-weather, all-road vehicle with some flair and the ability to keep dirty, smelly cargo in a bed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like to help me disrupt the YouTube algorithm. If you want more, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Thank you to my loyal patrons. I'll catch you in the next one.